Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We're getting closer and closer to figuring out who the NBA champion will be as the conference finals are in full swing now. When we last talked, we were talking about previewing these two series, and now we have some games under our belt. And the Lakers have fallen behind quickly as Denver has taken a 2-0 series lead in their best of 7 series. Remaining perfect at home throughout the postseason are the Denver Nuggets, and so that's where we're going to start. Sap is in Denver. Last night was a closer game throughout than Game 1. Game 1, the Lakers closed late, but Denver led most of the way. This was much more of a back and forth game, as I think people were expecting. But ultimately, it was Denver that was able to close the gap late, and then in the fourth quarter, sort of pull away just enough to win the game, though their last few possessions were not great. I thought, Sap, a big issue for LA in this game was the late gameplay of your guy, LeBron James.
He was bad. He was certainly bad. He wasn't really great in the first 3 quarters either. And normally LeBron comes up big in the fourth quarter of these games, especially in the conference finals. Last night he didn't. You look at the Lakers, Jet, Anthony Davis and LeBron James combined for 40 points. Meanwhile, Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves combined for 43 points. That makes absolutely no sense. LeBron has got to get away from taking as many threes as he has pretty much all year, and even more so in the postseason. Do you realize so far in the postseason, which has encompassed 14 games, Jet, that in the fourth quarter, he's made exactly 1 3-point shot in 14 games? To make it even worse, in the fourth quarter, he's missed his last 19 3-point field goal attempts. So
it's like Jason Tatum in the first quarter.
Yeah, exactly. Or John Starks back in the 94 finals against the Houston Rockets. It's like LeBron has the ball, he puts it up, and as a Laker fan, you're like, no. And as a Denver fan, you're like, yes, because we're going to get the rebound because Jokic controls the boards, and it's kind of a wasted possession for the Lakers. So that's been an issue pretty much all year. You want LeBron driving to the basket. Again, at 38 years old, it's not that easy to just put your head down and go to the basket like you want to see LeBron do. But also at 38, with all the mileage he has on those legs, and you're playing all the minutes he has in the postseason, in the fourth quarter, those legs aren't quite as fresh, and that affects his outside shot. The Lakers are not a good 3-point shooting team. They're just not. They're just a old school team. They're big, they're physical, they can rebound, they can defend. I jokingly said the best thing for the league would be the Lakers winning the championship, because it might have teams trying to copycat that rather than just rolling out 3-point shooters, which most of the teams in the league have. Right. But frustrating, though, because the Lakers haven't been bad in these 2 games, but they haven't been good enough to beat a Denver team that right now looks like the best team in basketball. By the way, Denver 42-7 at home this year. Oof. And Jokic has just been phenomenal. And last night, Jamal Murray, 23 fourth quarter points. He's done that before in the postseason. He's starting to look a little bit more like the Jamal Murray of the bubble 3 years ago. So that gives Denver a legitimate number 2 player in Jamal Murray. And then the rest of the guys kind of fill in the gaps, whether it be Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, KCP, Bruce Brown. They've got a nice roster there. They're the number 1 seed for a reason out west, and they control the West really from the get-go. And they're in control right now. But let's not forget, in the last series, they won 2 games against Phoenix in Denver to go up 2-0, and then Phoenix was able to even that series with Game 3 and Game 4 wins in Phoenix. I think the Lakers can still do that, but at some point the Lakers are going to have to win in Denver to win this series.
Yeah, and Denver again has not lost at home in this playoffs, and like you said a second ago, Sap, they barely lost at home during the regular season. I think if you go look at LeBron's numbers from the last game, you say, well, he had a pretty good night. Double-double, 22 points, 10 assists, almost a triple-double, 9 rebounds, 4 steals, a couple of blocks. But it was like you said, that 0 of 6 from 3 is just an absolute killer. And as the Lakers were in both games, Sap, were sort of fighting to come back and win, I thought he took some ill-advised 3-pointers. You're saying basically any 3 he takes is ill-advised. I think that's fair, because that's just not what he's the best at doing. We were talked about this in the last Celtics series against the 76ers, that anytime Embiid shoots a 3-pointer, even though he can knock them down, it's advantage to the other team. Same thing goes for LeBron James. He can knock them down. We've seen him knock down huge ones before. God knows I've seen it a million times against the Celtics. But it's at this point in his career too, it's really putting the Lakers at a disadvantage, especially against a very strong Denver rebounding team. The only guy that you really trust to shoot threes consistently appears to be Reeves, Sap, who shot pretty well from three last game, 5 of 9. And he is just continuing to prove himself as more than just a guy that they found off the street that they plugged in and is putting up numbers because they didn't have enough. He's a legitimately good NBA player, Austin Reeves, and I think he's had a very nice playoff for himself, as is Hachimura. So the Lakers have found some stuff there, but they're going to need to make everybody saying, well, they found something at the end of game 1 with playing Hachimura more and putting Jamal Murray in the pick and roll. They still, even though they played better in game 2, Sap, that still wasn't enough. So they're going to have to find some more ways to limit other players. Like we said before the series started, Sap, Jokic is going to do what he's going to do. He was dominant in game 1. Game 2, he wasn't as dominant scoring the basketball, but he had 17 rebounds, 12 assists to go with his 23 points. So
does he roll out of bed with a triple-double, Jet?
Yeah,
it almost
it doesn't
seems like
matter.
He starts the game at
you can't do
20,
anything
10,
about
and
it, Sap.
10. Yeah,
you can't do anything about it.
His bare minimum is 20, 10, and 10, and then everything else is what he adds to it. It's amazing.
But what you can't do if you're the Lakers is you can't let Bruce Brown go for 12 points off the bench. You can't let Michael Porter Jr. get open looks and shoot 4 of 7 from 3 because he had a lot of wide open looks. He likes that corner 3. He's really good at it. I thought they gave that up too easily. And the Lakers did a nice job for 3 quarters on Jamal Murray, who wasn't having a good game. And then he just erupted in the fourth quarter. So the Lakers, whose defense has been arguably the best in the NBA since the trade deadline and in the playoffs, I'd say they've been the best defensive team. They need to adjust what they're doing defensively and focus, I think, less on what they're doing to Jokic and more on what we said at the beginning of the series, Sap, taking away the other players. If this game was close enough where if you don't let Brown have 12 points off the bench and you don't let a couple of these other role players get open shots, you win the game without much of an issue.
Yeah, Jokic is going to get his. So what you maybe want to limit is how many assists he gets because he breaks down your defense. He gets hot from the outside. He can score it on 3 levels. He can score with his back to the basket. Heck, he can score in transition, or he can even lead the break in transition, which at times is comical seeing a 7-foot, 280-pound guy in the middle of the break and making just perfect decisions, making great passes. Go back to years ago when Magic Johnson was doing that. Well, this guy is, 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller and is a classic center, and he's doing that. So he breaks down your defense. Yeah, I mean, if Jamal Murray's going to go get 37, and like you said, Brown's going to chip in with 12, Aaron Gordon does what he does, especially on the defensive end because he's such an athletic player. They have a lot of ways to beat you. They're very, very tough to beat at home. And like you said at the beginning of the series, they've been together for a while now, Murray and Jokic, of course. And, they were able to bring in Gordon a year ago, and he's fit in nicely. Michael Porter Jr., when he's healthy, has been a real key contributor. And some of the moves they made throughout the season have been really smart moves to add pieces that they needed. They're a tough team. They're a very, very tough team. They've been nearly unbeatable at home. They have been unbeatable at home here in the postseason. And the Lakers just falling a little bit short. And again, 8 for 30 from 3. If you can go 12 for 30, which is 40%, which is good, not necessarily incredible, well, you've got a different type of game going there. But, if LeBron's 0 for 6 from 3 and Anthony Davis is 0 for 3 from 3, well, there's 0 for 9. The rest of the team was 8 for 21, which isn't all that bad.
Right.
I just don't want to see Anthony Davis and LeBron James jacking up threes. I mean, LeBron can get hot. Like, nothing says that he can't go 4 for 8 from 3 on Saturday night. It's just that there's also a real possibility that he goes 1 for 8 from 3, and that's a disaster for Lakers fans.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Sap, he's certainly capable of doing it, but I don't think you can go into a game, especially a game that you can't lose now in game 3 for the Lakers. You can't go down 3-0 and say, okay, just because I'm capable of doing this means that I should do this. He's got to play, the style that he's best suited for, like you said, which is driving the ball to the basket and kicking out and finding open guys. Now, once the ball leaves his hand, his responsibility is done. Those guys have to knock down their shots. And besides, like I said, Austin Reeves, they haven't really been doing that. Russell has not had a good series so far. Lonnie Walker hasn't been able to really replicate what he did in the last series where he went bananas in the fourth quarter. Schroeder hasn't shot the ball well. He shot the ball awful last night. So, LeBron can can definitely play better, but he also needs some of his role players to step up too. Anthony Davis, 18 points is just not enough, Sap. I mean, again, look at the raw numbers and you say, okay, 18 and 14 and 4 blocks. That's a pretty good game. He didn't shoot the ball well, and he didn't score enough. They need him to be scoring in the mid-20s. The 25 or higher is the number they really need from Anthony Davis, Sap.
You need a minimum of 50 points, more likely 60 points combined from LeBron and Anthony Davis. Last night they gave you 40. And despite Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura doing a great job, it just wasn't enough. And then when you look at their roster, don't you really see that D'Angelo Russell should be their third guy, so that you allow Reeves, Hachimura, Schroeder, Walker, Vanderbilt, those guys to fill in the gaps as, your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh player, what have you, that D'Angelo Russell should be not necessarily a classic third guy on a roster. He's not quite that good, but a guy who can contribute. And look, the Lakers have played 14 postseason games. I think he's had maybe 4 good games. That's not good enough. They need more from D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, he's not played well, and this is sort of what's haunted in his career. Is sometimes he looks terrific. He looks like an all-star, like he was when he was on the Brooklyn Nets a couple of years ago. And other times he looks like he should be the 7th guy, or the 3rd guy coming off the bench. So he's a frustrating player, and that's why he's bounced around in his career. And this is his 2nd stint with the Lakers. So Russell has the ability. He just hasn't been able to be a consistent player throughout his career. I think that's what's frustrating about him. But yeah, I mean, I think Sap, basically you could cut down to, and especially in game 2, LeBron and Anthony Davis need to play better. And they obviously have the ability. If they do, it's very likely the Lakers win the next game, and they could take both these games in LA, and now we have a really competitive series on our hands. If they don't, Denver's going to win this series without much of an issue. Davis and LeBron must play better for the Lakers.
They have to. And again, LeBron's done this before. Twice in his career, he lost the first 2 games on the road in the best-of-7 series, and he came back to win that series in 2016 against the Warriors in the finals, in 2018 in the conference finals against the Celtics. But again, I must remind people that was 5 and 7 years ago. He's not the same player. He's still tremendous. Look, he almost had a triple-double last night. Not a real efficient one because he was 0 of 6 from 3. He's still quite capable of going
Russell Westbrook triple-double.
Yeah, kind of a cheap one, right? Whereas Jokic's are like, holy crap, when you go for 34, 21, and 14 in one game, I mean, are we talking about the measurements of Marilyn Monroe, or are we talking about a great stat line by a basketball player? It's like, holy crap, that doesn't even seem real. That's like stuff that Wilt Chamberlain did in his prime. And, oftentimes Wilt would have double figures in blocks, but no one knew about it because it was not an official stat until 1973, 74,
right,
when he was ready to retire. Lord knows how many blocks Russell and Chamberlain averaged throughout their career. But yeah, you got to have, an extreme game from LeBron. Look, he doesn't have to go get you 40, 15, and 15. No. He doesn't have to replicate what he did in 2012 in game 6 at TD Garden. He's not that guy anymore, but he's got to be more efficient. And like he was in game 6 against the Warriors, he's 14 of 18 from the floor. That's fantastic because he's driving the ball to the basket, which he's still better at than anyone, and it opens up a lot of room for his shooters as well. And then those guys have to knock down those shots. They're going to get a friendly whistle on Saturday night, I would think.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, you want to see this series extended, so drive the ball to the basket. I'm sure you'll see Anthony Davis at the free throw line 12 to 15 times. LeBron can get there a dozen times, and the rest of the team, chip in with another 15, 20 free throws, and all of a sudden you're taking 40 free throws and you're on your way. You should get a friendly whistle on Saturday. If you can at least get that win, now you put some pressure on Denver, because if this thing gets to 2-2, the pressure will fall back on Denver, because right now they're in total control of this series, up 2-0.
Yeah, and LeBron obviously is great in these must-win games, and has been over the course of his career. And it's not like Denver has blown doors. They haven't looked like, oh my God, this team is just head and shoulders better than the Lakers. They very nearly blew game 1, Sap. You could make a case they should have blown game 1. Had the Lakers just played competent basketball in any one of the first 3 quarters, they would have won that game. But they were terrible up until the 4th. So the Lakers, I don't feel like, are heading to LA and feeling like we just can't compete with this team. It's been close. And with a friendly whistle and with Davis and LeBron playing better, they should be able to tie it up. If I was a Laker fan right now, which I'm heavily rooting for the Nuggets, I think everybody who watches or listens to the show knows that about me at this point. I would not feel like you have to press the panic button right now. I think that, listen, you wanted a split in Denver, but considering how well the Nuggets have played, that wasn't something that you could say, okay, we're definitely going to get a split. Now you just need to do what you've done all postseason long, which is take care of your own home court. The only team that doesn't seem to do that is the Celtics, who we're going to get to in a second. And then, like you said, if they win these two games, all the pressure goes back to the Denver Nuggets. So a big couple of games coming up for the Lakers, but games that if I were to bet on it, I would say the Lakers are going to win the next two.
I would think so. And I think if they just step it up enough, especially with LeBron and Anthony Davis, and maybe D'Angelo Russell has one good game in Los Angeles to help you get over the mark in that game, and then you get some big performances from Reeves or Archie Moore, then you can even the series up at 2 games apiece, go back to Denver, and you're on your merry way. But, the first one obviously is Saturday. Take care of business there because like you said, Jeff, they haven't been blown out in these games. They lost by 6 and 5. They covered the line in both games. So if you're betting on the Lakers plus points, you're 2-0 in this series. But that doesn't mean anything for LeBron, who's chasing his 5th championship, and the Lakers trying to win their 18th. But I think they'll be able to at least win Saturday, and then you see how that game goes before you kind of determine what's going to happen in Game 4.
Yeah, and so now we're going to head to the Eastern Conference Final, Sap, with my beloved Boston Celtics, who dropped Game 1 to the Miami Heat, 123-116 in favor of Miami. Celtics did what they seem to be excelling at doing in this postseason and in the regular season too, which was just get in their own way. And that was highlighted, Sap, by just one of the worst quarters of basketball you will ever see. Third quarter, Celtics get outscored 25-46. How you give up 46 points to this Miami Heat team in a quarter is beyond me, Sap. And the Celtics lose, and now they're in a situation where tonight is essentially a must-win. You can't go down 0-2 and head to Miami. And the Celtics have been bad at home this postseason, Sep. Of the remaining teams, they're the only team that's suffered a home loss, I believe, and they've suffered 4 of them now. So not good at home. And again, that third quarter, which hasn't been that big of an issue this year, but it was the past couple of years, that came back and reared its ugly head. And that's all Miami needed was to take that quarter, and they won the game. And then we can talk about this too, Sap, with the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla saying, well, we won 3 out of the 4 quarters. It's not boxing. You don't win on points in the NBA. You win by scoring more points. If you don't say, okay, well, you won this quarter, you're up 1-0. 2, second quarter, 2-0. That's not how it works. I don't know if they're aware of that. But yeah, frustrating, Sap, because, again, you look at these 2 rosters and you go, well, how the hell is Miami doing this? Well, Jimmy Butler, for one, and the Celtics, again, Sap, just constantly in their own way.
You look at the 46-25 beatdown in the third quarter, that's 4 points per minute for Miami. Like, they have a good, not a great offense. I mean, if this was the Warriors with Durant and Curry or any of the great teams we've seen over the years, you give up 46 points, maybe you tip your cap and say that team was just on fire. But Miami had so many open looks. It's as if the Celtics stopped playing defense. And just to let you know a little bit, Mazzulla means no timeout in Italian because he didn't call a timeout in the entire third quarter. And then to come out after the game and say, well, I used 2 timeouts in the first quarter. Well, you still had timeouts available in the third quarter. And then, like you said, Jet, to say you won 3 or 4 quarters. You know who won 3 or 4 quarters? The Atlanta Falcons in Super Bowl 51. Yeah. How'd that work out? They won quarters 1, 2, and 3, and somehow lost the game because of Tom Brady and the Patriots coming back from 28-3. So, it's not boxing, it's not bowling, it's not anything else. It's what it is in basketball. Frustrating. The thing about Miami is that they just seem to show up every night at a similar level, right? Like you're going to get like a B+ game from the Miami Heat every single night. The Celtics, you may get an A+, like you got in Game 7 against Philadelphia or Game 2 against Philadelphia. You may get a B- like you did in Game 4 against Philadelphia. Or you may get like a D, like you got in Game 5 against Philadelphia. And I know I'm confusing everyone trying to recall, recent games, but you get my point. They're so up and down, whereas Miami's just that steady team that you're going to get what you get from them. Like if they lose, you're going to have to beat them. They're not going to beat themselves. And look, their spot-up shooters were on fire in the third quarter, whether it was Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Jimmy Butler was breaking down the defense. They do have two all-stars, and Butler steps it up in the postseason, and Bam Adebayo was damn good as well. And then you just got a bunch of shooters that got hot, including Kyle Lowry, who kept you in the game in the first half. So that's pretty much how they do things. And if you're not going to play defense against those guys, they're going to hit those open shots and make it really tough on you.
Yes, Sap. Vincent, Strus, Martin, and Lowry all had 15 points. That's 60 points. From your role players. Hard to win a game if you're the other team and you're giving up 60 points to the other team's role players. And then obviously Jimmy Butler did what Jimmy Butler did, and Bam Adebayo had a fine game. It's so frustrating. Sap, the Miami Heat averaged the least amount of points per game in the NBA this season. You gave up 46 points to them in a quarter. They averaged in the regular season, Sap, they averaged 109 points. So you gave up 46 to them in a quarter. That's just, I don't know how that's possible. Like you were saying, it was Mazzulla didn't call a timeout, which he's been awful at all year long, even though he doesn't acknowledge that, which is maddening, but okay, whatever. And then you didn't close out on any of the shooters. All, like you said, Sap, they were hot and they're good shooters, but like, were they difficult shots? It's not like they were hitting these circus shots and you're saying, like you said, tip your cap to them. Wow, what an exhibition. The Celtics weren't playing any defense. And then offensively, the Celtics tried to revert into like 1990s low post basketball. They were just only trying to score in the paint, which is like so opposite of what they've done all season long. It didn't make any sense. Mazzulla got his pants coached off, which I was worried about. And you brought up too, Sap, before the series, and that you're talking about arguably the best coach in the NBA against arguably the worst coach in the NBA, certainly the worst and least experienced coach left in the playoffs. And it showed in that game, Sap. And now the Celtics, for the second series in a row, are in a situation where they have a must-win game in game two. That's not where you want to be. And frankly, Sap, too, you got a lot of contribution out of some of your role players too. I thought Robert Williams had a good first half, not a great second half. Brogdon played well. Tatum had a really good game, but it just defensively they were a mess.
Yeah, and I thought Marcus Smart was great in the first half. Tatum, how does he only have 4 shots in the second half, none in the fourth quarter, and yet he commits 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter? Because I think they froze him out. Normally, the opposition tries to freeze out a player. Well, the Celtics did it to their own best player by not going to him in the third and fourth quarter, that by the time he got the ball in his hands late in the game, he was probably looking at it and going, what is this thing in my hands? Oh, it's a basketball. I remember I used to play this. It was just frustrating to watch. And you look at the Celtics over the last 2 seasons, and look, they made it to the finals last year, losing in 6 games to the Warriors. They still may win the championship. If you told me to put $100 on one of these 4 remaining teams to win the championship, I'd pick the Celtics because I think they're the best team. I'm certainly not a green teamer. They're 8-10 in their last 18 home playoff games. In 7 series in the last 2 seasons, they've lost game 1 4 times, 3 at home, right? I mean, they lost to Milwaukee last year, game 1 at home. They lost to Philadelphia game 1 this year, and now they just lost to Miami in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Even their wins weren't overly impressive when you look back over the last 7 series. Remember the opening game against Brooklyn last year, you needed a kind of a brain fart by Brooklyn and Tatum hitting the game-winning shot at the buzzer. Then in the finals, Golden State was horrible in the fourth quarter, and the Celtics just shot lights out in that fourth quarter. I think you and I could have stepped on the court and hit threes. And then Atlanta in series number 1 this year, you won by 13, although you'd been up by 25. You took your foot off the gas in that one. It's a maddening team, but 8-10 in their last 18 home playoff games, and that is considered one of the best home courts in all of basketball. The Athletic had a poll among players and said it's one of the toughest, if not the toughest place to play for the
players
opposition.
Voted it as number 1.
Number 1, well, maybe they voted number 1 because they know they can come into the postseason and win. Because that's what they've done. 8-10 in your last 18 home playoff games. That's absurd to be at
terrible.
That level. I mean, crazy.
Absolutely. And diving into Mazzulla a little bit more here too, Sap, like people are giving him a lot of crap about playing Peyton Pritchard. I don't have a problem with him trying something new. But when it wasn't working, time to pull the plug. Like Pritchard had zero impact on that game, offensively or defensively. I don't think he was a negative, but he was a nothing. Grant Williams is stuck on ice for God knows what reason. I'm not that I am the biggest Grant Williams fan in the world, but I mean, he was playing a major role on a team that came within a couple of games of winning the championship last year. Now he's completely benched. Sam Hauser hasn't seen the court in what seems like 2 months. So I don't know where his rotations are at or what his heads are at, where his head's at. And that Marcus Smart's explanation for the lack of timeouts is that, Joe is big on accountability and he doesn't want to have to bail us out. He wants us to figure out our own problems. Well, Sap, that's great for a youth team that you're trying to teach life lessons to, and it's like, you got to be self-sufficient and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. This is a professional team where guys get paid millions of dollars and you're trying to win a championship against other professional teams. It's not time for life lessons in the middle of a game that people are paying their hard-earned money to go and see. You're not trying to impart wisdom during the game. Do that in the locker room, sure. You don't want to do it in practice sessions, sure. In the middle of the game, like, is he's trying to prove points? I didn't get what Smart was saying with that. And then, like you said, Seth, and then we talked about the being really happy about winning 3 of the 4 quarters. Well, that is absolutely meaningless in a basketball game. That's not how wins and losses are determined. It's never been how wins and losses are determined. It's absolutely meaningless to point that out.
Did he have 11:45 p.m. dinner reservations in the North End? I mean, that he had to get to. That's why he didn't use a timeout in the third quarter. Look, Phil Jackson used to do this, but Phil Jackson had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kobe Bryant. Those guys could figure it out. They're all-time great players. This is still a team that's still trying to find its way, which is maddening in a sense, because Smart's in his 9th year, Brown's in his 7th year, Tatum's in his 6th year, Al Horford is 4 years older than Mazzulla himself. So this is a team that now I consider a veteran team. It's not a young team anymore. This is a team that's, played a lot of playoff games over the year. Heck, Jason Tatum, the youngest of the major players on this team, has played 88 postseason games in his career. So he's used to this. He's got to be better in big situations, right? It's not their first time around. And again, his whole thing was really combative with the media. And again, the Celtics don't have the toughest media following them. I mean, they ask pretty benign questions, right? I mean, if Dan Shaughnessy shows up, good luck to Joe Mazzulla, because Shaughnessy will go at him and ask tough questions in a very nice manner, because Dan Shaughnessy is really good at that, and I love Shaughnessy. He's a great writer and really kind of the conscious of old time writing here in Boston. But he's battling them. He's talking nonsense. And you know what? I'm starting to think that he doesn't call timeouts because maybe he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Like, you call a timeout, what do? It's 3 minutes. Maybe he's got nothing to say. This is where the lack of a true veteran assistant really hurts the Celtics. They lost Will Hardy before Ime Udoka was suspended. He goes to Utah. Did Will Hardy become the head coach and did a really nice job. Midway through the season, Damon Stoudemire goes to Georgia Tech. Like, where's the veteran assistant coach, the consigliere, if you will, Tom Hagen to the Godfather,
right?
That can sit next to him and be there for him. We've seen this in every sport. I mean, who can ever forget Joe Torre managing the New York Yankees with Don Zimmer by his side? Kind of his sidekick, his buddy, his drinking buddy, whatever. They would go to Wonderland or, Suffolk Downs the day of a game. And again, they had the best talent. So, probably anybody could have managed them, but they did a great job understanding the personalities. Where's that veteran coach, like a Frank Vogel? We've heard that name thrown around, who can maybe nudge him and say, Joe, you got to call a timeout here, and here's what we say. It's 3 minutes. Even if you don't say anything, you kind of stem the tide and quiet that other team down a little bit and give your own guys a 3-minute break to hydrate and think about what they're doing wrong. It is really frustrating. And he's pretty adamant about it. He pushes back almost like a radio sports talk show host. He'd probably be great at that. I don't want to give him any ideas.
Yeah, no, he gets upset when they call him out about stuff. He thinks he knows because he thinks he knows better than everybody.
Right.
Listen, I'm sure he knows basketball well, Sep. He's not. I mean, you don't get into this position by that.
He's a very smart guy, but he's not Popovich or Belichick, who can act like a-holes because they have 5 and 6 championships respectively. Now, didn't hurt to have Tim Duncan and Tom Brady being your guy.
Yeah, but I think, again, I'm sure he knows basketball. He's been around it his whole life. But that doesn't change the fact that the reason he is where he is right now is because Ime Udoka was sleeping around and the Celtics were forced in this circumstance. Mazzulla is probably realistically 3-ish years away from being a head coach in the NBA at this current rate. So he's 3 years ahead of where you would expect him to be. That's based off of where he was last year on the staff, which was like he was sitting behind the bench.
He's like the
So
fourth assistant, right? He was in
yes,
charge of, I think he basically formulated the defensive game plan against Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals and did a good job. They won that series. So
great. I'd
obviously,
love to
yeah,
see that again this year
yeah,
against
maybe you should
Miami in the
work on
Eastern
that and
Conference
that
Finals.
exclusively. Yeah, because gave up 123 points in game one. Look, I've said it a million times. Whit Grousbeck and Brad Stevens have given their Lamborghini to a high school junior who just got his learner's permit. That's
Yeah,
dangerous.
absolutely, and it showed. And in some of the games the Celtics have lost this postseason have been directly on Joe Mazzulla. Now, obviously, the players have a far bigger impact than the coach, and you got to point your fingers primarily at them. But whereas Eric Spoelstra can coach you to winning a game or two, Mazzulla can't. The Celtics are going to have to overcome
No,
that. I said that the very first day we started doing our postseason preview stuff, that was my biggest concern about them, and it's reared its head, and it may rear its head more times before the Celtics either hoist up a championship trophy or are eliminated. So we'll have to see, but it's definitely something to keep our eye on tonight, as this again is a must win for the Celtics, as they cannot go down to 0-2 and head to Miami. So before we wrap up, Sap, we do have a little bit more of business to attend to, in that the NBA draft lottery was held the other night, and the big winners were the San Antonio Spurs, who really seem to know how to win the lottery when it counts. This was their third overall win of the lottery. First time they got David Robinson. Second time they got Tim Duncan. Now they have Victor Wembanyama, considered by many to be the best prospect since LeBron James. Some people even think he's a better prospect than LeBron James. I don't know how that's possible. So, Sap, first, let's say what we think of the fit, and for San Antonio, what that means for their future. And then kind of, do we think this hype is getting a little out of control with Wembanyama?
well, first of all, the San Antonio Spurs are the Hillary Swank of draft lotteries. You know, they've won it 3 times, and they got two great players already, like you said, and David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and Victor Wembanyama apparently is better than both of those guys. Hillary Swank, 2 Oscar nominations, 2 Oscar wins, right? Boys Don't Cry and $1 Million Baby. So that's the way to do it, I guess. The fit is going to be interesting. Like, Popovich is an all-time great coach. Is he the right guy for Victor Wembanyama? I mean, I know everybody's going to say, well, he's going to teach him the right way. The Spurs, even though they've been pretty bad the last few years, their offense is always well constructed. It's well spaced. They'll get the most out of him. But I almost get the idea that if the Patriots got this elite young quarterback, say Caleb Williams next year, the Heisman Trophy winner out of
Right.
USC, would you want him going to Bill Belichick, or would you prefer him going to, I don't know, someone who's more of an offensive coach, an offensive mind? And I'm not saying Popovich can't coach still, but you get what I'm saying. You get this kind of, I don't know, curmudgeon who's
Yeah.
73, 74 years old, who's probably past his prime, and now you're giving him this otherworldly talent who just seems like a freak. It's like someone constructed this guy in a lab somewhere, because he's been described as Kevin Durant's skill set with Giannis's athleticism rolled into a 7'5" body. Like, that seems damn scary to me, to have all that rolled into one. And like Woj just said, Adrian Wojnarowski, who's not prone to hyperbole, that this is the best prospect in the history of team sports. And it got me thinking, okay, I think the then Lou Alcindor and also LeBron James are the first two names that come to mind in basketball. Wayne Gretzky and Bobby Orr in hockey. Football, maybe John Elway. But I get what Woj was saying, that this guy is just like, he's going to be the tallest guy in the league next year.
Right.
And he has Kevin Durant's skills and Giannis's athleticism. And apparently his work ethic is through the roof. He's already learned to speak English, because years ago he just assumed that that's what he needed to do
He
to
speaks
build his
perfect
brand,
English.
which is incredible. That's great. Like, this is someone who's been planning to be an NBA superstar from when, 12, 13 years old. I mean, and look at his lineage. I mean, his mother was a track star. His father was a basketball player. His grandparents played basketball. I mean, it's like, this seems like the perfect guy. It maybe is going a bit overboard, because what happens if he ends his career as a top 10 player with 3 championships he's going to be looked at as a failure, right?
Yeah,
According to what
I
everyone's
heard
saying.
Chris Broussard, who I think is an absolute moron, and I've said that many times. I don't like him at all. Said that if he's Hakeem Olajuwon, it's a failure.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
could.
man,
Yeah, no, exactly.
that's awfully tough if you're talking about one of the greatest players
Right.
of all time. If that's what you hit and you're looked at, man, he really failed. So I mean, what's achieving then? He's got to win 6 championships and 3 MVPs. That's the baseline. Man, that's asking an awful lot from anybody. I don't care who you are.
And the narrative is he's going to be the best player in the league in 3 years. And I was listening to Broussard last night. I actually like he and Rob Parker. I think they have a good dynamic together. I don't always agree with them for sure, but they were talking about, well, you could say that, but what they were talking about was what player in the league would you trade for him? And I don't think there's anyone, because the upside is so high and he's 19 years old. Heck, LeBron was in his rookie year when this guy was born in January of 2004. Tom Brady already had 2 Super Bowls. So he's so young and he's going to have this long career. Again, 7'5" guys do have some injury concerns going forward, although he's sturdier than, say, Chet, was it Chet or Chad Holmgren, who was drafted last year, who just looks like a guy who's going to deal with injuries, or Sean Bradley, or these guys that just aren't durable.
No, the only one who didn't sap was Kareem with the huge frame.
And he took care of himself. I mean, he was a guy that worked so hard. He was like at the forefront of conditioning and martial arts and diet. So, and it appears to me like this guy is going to do everything to make himself as great as he can be. And that's what's damn scary. I wouldn't trade anybody for him. I know Draymond Green on his podcast was saying, well, I would trade him for LeBron or Steph. Well, that's ridiculous.
That's
LeBron's 38
idiotic.
and Steph's 35.
Right, idiotic.
Luka, Luka's great, but Luka doesn't exactly look to be a slave of conditioning himself. So are we going to go there? I mean, Embiid is an injury concern. Giannis has been in the league 10 years. How much longer does he have at this high level? Because he relies so heavily on athleticism. Jokic, again, 10 years in the league. I wouldn't trade this guy for anyone, because if you did, and he turns out to be like 80% as good as we're being told he's going to be, then it's a bad move, because this guy's going to win a ton of championships and maybe reinvent the game as we know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be talking a whole lot more about him as the draft approaches and after he gets drafted, and probably for years to come. He's an extremely exciting prospect, and there's going to be a lot to talk about when it comes to him. And San Antonio is now completely reinvigorated, as they've been sort of dormant for a few years. So a lot of Wembanyama talk will be going on this show, but we're going to mainly be focused on the playoffs as they continue. Again, Celtics play tonight, Lakers tomorrow. So by the time we come back next week on Monday or Tuesday, we'll have plenty to talk about in terms of how these series are going. So make sure you check out our social medias for all the latest at JohnSapp25, at Jet Stryer. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sapp, and check out Full Press Coverage for all sorts of great stuff. So thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you next week. Thanks.